I should have never opened the door. Not to him. Not to the man who baptized my children and prayed over my marriage. But I did. And the moment I stepped aside and let Pastor Eric into my living room, something in my spirit cracked. My husband Ross was 2 states away, and I was standing barefoot in a house that suddenly felt too quiet, too vulnerable, too full of unspoken hunger. What happened next still haunts me when I lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling. I did something I swore I would never do. Not to Ross. Not to myself. And certainly not with a man who wore a cross around his neck. Now, I wake up with a sick feeling in my stomach, and Pastor Eric's jacket is still draped over my couch. My phone vibrates. It is Ross. He says he is cutting his trip short. He will be home by noon. I think I stopped breathing. Before I go on, I just want to say a heartfelt thank you to every single one of you watching this channel. If you have subscribed, I deeply appreciate you. And if you are new or returning but have not yet subscribed, I hope you will hit that button today. It may look small, but it means the world to me. It keeps this channel going strong. Please do not forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments below. I truly read every single one. Now, let us go back to that night in West Virginia. My name is Cynthia. I am 50 years old. I have been married to Ross for 30 beautiful, complicated, mostly faithful years. He is a good man. The kind of man who fixes my coffee exactly how I like it and knows when to hold me in silence after a hard day. We live just outside Morgantown, West Virginia. A small house. A garden. Peace. We also belong to a small Baptist church downtown. And Pastor Eric, well, he has been more than a spiritual leader to our family. He has been a friend. He is 52. Charismatic. Widely respected. And until last week, I would have told you he was a man of God through and through. Ross had gone on a work trip to Ohio. He was scheduled to be gone for 6 days. Before he left, he kissed my forehead and joked, "Do not fall apart without me." The first 3 days were uneventful. I read, prayed, cleaned. But by the 4th day, the silence began to creep in. I had trouble sleeping. I missed the sound of Ross snoring beside me. I felt hollow. That Thursday, I attended our midweek church service alone. After everyone had left, Pastor Eric invited me to stay back for a moment of prayer. He said he could sense I was carrying something heavy. That was when it began. We sat in his office. He talked about how difficult his own marriage had become, how Sister Marlene no longer touched him, not even with her eyes. He said, "Even men of God feel invisible sometimes." Something shifted in me. I should have left. But instead, I said, "I understand more than you think." We sat there for nearly an hour. No touching. Just stories. Just pain. Shared, vulnerable pain. That night it stormed. Hard rain. Loud thunder. Around 9:45 p.m., someone knocked on my door. It was Pastor Eric. Soaking wet. Smiling nervously. I was just checking in. "I hope I did not wake you." I told him to come in. We drank tea. We talked again. But this time, the silence between our words said more than anything we actually spoke. He reached for my hand, and I let him. It was not passion. It was not love. It was weakness. And now, the man who holds my soul's secrets has left a piece of himself in my house. Ross is coming home early. And I do not know if I will ever be able to look him in the eye again. Ross walked through the front door earlier than expected. His smile lit up the room like nothing had ever happened. But something had happened. Something I buried deep behind my eyes and locked behind a smile that shook at the corners. He hugged me. I flinched. Only slightly. But enough. "I missed you, baby," he said. "I missed you too." The words tasted like guilt. He noticed Pastor Eric's jacket still draped on the arm of the couch. That his? Ross asked. I nodded too quickly. He stopped by during the storm, just to check in. I forgot to return it. Ross did not ask further. He trusted me. That made it worse. 2 days passed. I avoided church. I avoided mirrors. I avoided myself. But Sunday came, and so did the reckoning. I sat beside Ross on the third pew. Pastor Eric stood at the pulpit like nothing ever happened. He preached on forgiveness. His eyes scanned the room and stopped on me, just for a second. That second lasted forever. My palms began to sweat. My knees trembled. I could not breathe. After service, Ross was pulled aside by Deacon Miller. I started to head out alone, but I felt a tap on my shoulder. Cynthia, Pastor Eric said, can we speak privately? Just for a moment. I hesitated. I do not think that is a good idea. Please. Just a few minutes. In my office. I nodded. Stupid. Weak. Confused. We sat in silence. The same chairs. The same room. But everything was different now. I have not been able to sleep, Eric said. What we did. It was wrong. I stared at the bookshelf behind him. Then why did you do it? Because I felt seen. By you. He leaned forward. Tell me what you want me to do, Cynthia. Do I confess to Ross? Do I step down from the pulpit? No, I whispered. Just stay away from me. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Then his face changed. It is Marlene, he said. She has been acting strange lately. Distant. She asked to go through counseling. My heart dropped. I felt something closing in. That night, I tried to sleep beside Ross, but his breathing, steady and calm, only made my chest feel tighter. I have been thinking, he said in the dark. Maybe it is time I retire early. Start doing things with you again. Fishing, traveling. I miss being home with you. My eyes welled up. That sounds nice. Are you crying? No, I had to lie. Just tired. The next afternoon, I got a call. Unknown number. Hello? Cynthia? This is Marlene. Pastor Eric's wife. My stomach twisted. I would like to speak with you, she said. Privately. Woman to woman. Can you meet me? I almost dropped the phone. Why? I asked. There was a pause. I found something. I think my husband is in love with someone else. I met Marlene at a quiet cafe off the main road. It was one of those places that played soft gospel music and smelled like old wood and cinnamon. She was already there when I walked in, nursing a half-empty cup of tea, staring out the window like she was waiting for a sign from God. When she saw me, she smiled. But it was not a real smile. It was one of those tight, practiced expressions women wear when their hearts are crumbling, but they are too proud to fall apart in public. Thank you for coming, she said. I sat across from her, my hands trembling under the table. I debated whether I should call you, she began. But I found something last night. In Eric's nightstand. A journal. My mouth went dry. He wrote about you. Her voice cracked. Not by name. But I knew. The way he described her. A woman with a soft voice. A woman who listened. Who gave him something I no longer could. I swallowed hard. He has been distant with me for a long time, she continued. But after reading those words, I realized I lost him long before I suspected. Tears filled her eyes. Tell me the truth, Cynthia. Please. Was it you? The weight of silence pressed against my chest. I looked down. I could not lie anymore. Yes. That single word changed everything. Marlene pushed her chair back, stood up slowly, and whispered, I thought you were my friend. I never meant for it to happen, but it did. She walked out without another word. And just like that, The secret was no longer mine to carry alone. Days passed in a blur. Marlene never came to church again. Pastor Eric announced he was taking a leave of absence to focus on his personal walk with God. And me? I sat across from Ross at the dinner table one evening, unable to eat, unable to breathe.
I have to tell you something, I said.
He looked up from his plate. His eyes already knew. It happened while you were away, I confessed. It was a mistake. A terrible, painful mistake. His face did not change. No shouting. No anger. Just a quiet, steady heartbreak. He stood up, walked to the bedroom, packed a bag, and left without a single word. For the first time in 30 years, our house felt like a stranger's home. I sat in the silence and tried to pray, but the words caught in my throat. Eventually, I began counseling. Alone. I needed to understand what led me to betray the only man who ever truly loved me. 3 months later, Ross returned. Not to forgive, not to forget, but to begin again slowly, carefully. We are still trying, but things are not the same. They may never be. What I learned is this: betrayal does not always begin with a kiss. Sometimes it begins with a conversation, a shared silence, a small crack in the wall of loyalty. And once it starts, it is hard to stop the flood that follows. I will carry this for the rest of my life. Not just the guilt, but the lesson. Never let emotional loneliness lead you into spiritual blindness. If this story moved you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in my shoes? Have you ever faced a moment of weakness that changed your life forever? Please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Thank you for listening.